Hi, in this module, we're going to go through installing and managing plugins. So plugins are a really powerful feature of WordPress, which extend the functionality of your website. I always say that plugins are the best and the worst thing about WordPress because they are really powerful. They can extend the functionality of your website quite extensively, but also they could get out of hand and they can really slow down your website if you install too many of them or you install inefficient ones that don't perform well. They also can be a source of malware and security risks. So you have to be really careful about which plugins you're installing and where you're getting your plugins from. So I'll go through that a little bit in this module, and I'll also show you how to install and manage your plugins. So we'll log into our dashboard. Actually, if I go to home, you'll see that on the top bar here, I don't have any indicators that there's any plugin updates available. You could also check under dashboard updates. This option will show you updates for all of your WordPress versions, all of your plugins, all of your plugins here, and all of your themes. So this is a nice one-stop kind of place to see if anything is outdated on your website that needs to be updated. On the plugins screen itself, which we'll go through next, you'll get a little bit more information. So I'll go actually, if I click plugins or go and install plugins, it'll take me to that screen. And here you can see all of the plugins that are installed on your website. A general rule of thumb is try to keep things, especially if you're starting out, I would say try to keep things under 10 to 20 maximum plugins. Again, not all plugins are the same. Some are really efficient, some are really tiny and don't cause any performance issues, and some are really heavy and can slow down your website, or worse, create security issues as well. So when you get to this plugins, install plugins screen, you'll see all of the plugins that are available, that are installed on your website. WordPress doesn't need any plugins in order to run. So you can uninstall all of these and your website will work just fine. So they're not a requirement. They're just an add-on to extend the functionality of your website. If you remember when we imported this theme in this template, actually for the Astra theme, it installed a bunch of plugins on the to the website, so such as Cart Flows and WooCommerce and WP Forms and Elementor. Some of these other ones were actually we added, or they were added by SiteGround by default. If you have any updates for your plugin, you'll see a little yellow indicator on the bottom, which will give you an option to update that particular plugin. I don't have any available now, unfortunately, to show you, but it's easy to figure out, and you'll see there on the bottom, you click update and it'll update that plugin. You can also enable automatic plugin updates, which I don't necessarily recommend, just because you do want to, plugins can cause issues with your website. So if you do update plugins, I would say test them to make sure that your website is still functioning correctly. There's some other options here. You can mass select them, and you can bulk update them, bulk inactivate or activate them, or enable automatic updates or disable. There's some additional filtering here. You know, you can look for active and inactive, for example. So if I inactivate or deactivate this particular plugin, you'll see that I'll be able to filter further down for only active ones or inactive ones, or view all, and filter that way. You can also search for plugins here. The one thing to keep in mind is just because you inactivate a plugin, you'll still get update indications if there's an update available. And even if you are not using a plugin and it's inactivated, you should still keep it up to date, and you should keep it updated from a security perspective. Best practice, however, is if you're not using a plugin, you should delete it from your website to avoid any issues and to kind of clean everything out. So for the purposes of this, I'm just going to show you quickly. I'm just going to delete this duplicate page plugin because I'm going to reinstall it. And then also this SiteGround Central, I'm not using it anymore. I'm just going to inactivate it for now. This is something that's installed by default, and this actually drives the appearance of adding new plugins, that screen. And if you remember, when we were adding a theme, it actually changed the look and feel of this screen to, this is the vanilla WordPress look and feel. This is actually, if you remember, this looked a little bit different when we were working with it earlier. So it's again, searching and uploading and installing works the same way, but now we've disabled that SiteGround plugin that modifies this, and it stopped changing the look and feel of this, and also the look and feel of adding new plugins, which I'll go through next. Again, you should, if you're not using a plugin, you should delete it and remove it from your website. But I just wanted to show that even inactivating it will inactivate the features of that plugin as well. Another thing to keep in mind is most plugins write information to the database as well, and they also have code and files in your installation that are used for that plugin to function. So if I go back into my FTP view of the website, if you remember, this is the root. If I go to public HTML, and then I go to WP content, and then I go to plugins, this is where all of these plugins live. So if you, I don't recommend doing this, but if you delete something here, or you change the name of the folder, it'll actually update the or inactivate a plugin. So this is where they live. Sometimes that's useful for troubleshooting. For example, if you're having an issue with the plugin, sometimes the plugin developer or your hosting support will tell you to inactivate it or change the name of it here in order to kind of like make your website start working again, or for troubleshooting purposes. So it's good to know where it is, just in case you do need to do that. But I don't recommend making changes this way unless you're adding your own plugins or developing your own plugins for your website. All right, so we're back to this screen. What we're going to do next is we're going to add a new plugin. So one plugin that I usually like to install, it's called duplicate page. Oops, sorry. Duplicate page. And a couple of useful things to know when you're on the screen are so each of these plugins is going to have a standard set of elements, data elements that you should look for. So one of them is, the title, description, and the author, but then also really important, the reviews, how many installations, so how many sites have it installed, when was it last updated, and if it's compatible with your version of WordPress. These are really good and important indicators. For example, you want to install something that has been maintained and is compatible with your version of WordPress. Because there was a new WordPress version just released a few days ago, a lot of these are going to say untested with your version, which is fine. But generally speaking, you want this. This is a good indicator that it's maintained and it's a good quality plugin. Another one, of course, is how many reviews and how many installs, and if it's been updated, will also give you good information about this. So this one looks really sound, for example, as compared to something else that may not have, let's find one. For example, I would recommend installing, this one versus something like this that, has no reviews, only has 30 installs, hasn't been updated in 7 months, and is untested. This is an extreme example, of course, but is untested with your version. So, look for that when you're installing plugins. This will avoid a lot of issues with your website and also security problems that you might experience. If you click on more details, this will open up a page. This is actually from WordPress.org, their plugin directory. It'll give you a little bit more information about the plugin, what it does, the features, the reviews. You can also see them on the plugin page, WordPress plugin page, which has similar information, and any other information about the plugin. So you can either click install now, or you can go back to this screen and install it through here. So I'm going to install this plugin, duplicate page. If I go back to plugins, you'll see it's inactivated. I didn't activate it yet. So I'll activate it in order to make it show up on my website. This is a really small and handy plugin. It doesn't cause any issues, and it's really helpful. It also doesn't have a lot of settings. So there is a settings screen here that you can go into to see if there's anything, anything else that you want to configure. I usually don't for this particular one, but I'll show you how it works. But that's basically the process of installing plugins and managing them. So you do want to go in here often and make sure that all of your plugins are up to date and that they're tested with your version of WordPress. Another main thing is when you're installing, deleting, updating plugins, when you're done, you want to make sure you're purging your cache. If you do have a caching plugin, which is basically a must for WordPress sites, and just to make sure that you're testing the latest version of your website. Another thing when you're researching these that's handy is going to the WordPress.org plugin directory here. You can search for these. You can search for plugins this way as well and install them. You'll see a similar looking page here that we saw in WordPress itself in our installation. But if you go in here, there's some useful information again, around reviews, installation instructions, support, which is really handy where you get any issues that people might be having. You could search the forum, to see if you are having an issue, to research and see how you can fix it, or you can log in for free, create a free WordPress.org account, which I recommend, and creating a topic and asking the plugin developer a question yourself, or if you're having issues with it. So this is a handy website as well to keep in mind of when you're working with plugins. So this particular plugin, duplicate page, what it does is if I go into pages or posts, doesn't matter, I'm going to go into pages. It'll allow you to duplicate a page really quickly, which surprisingly isn't a core feature of WordPress. It'll allow you to, for example, if I hover over about, I can duplicate this and it'll make an exact copy of this page or post, and it'll allow me to edit it. Another handy feature of this plugin, it'll actually also allow me to do the same thing for products, WooCommerce products as well, which is really handy. So there are certain ones that only allow you to duplicate posts, for example, your blog posts. This one allows you to duplicate a lot more than just posts. So it's really handy. So that's how you work with plugins. You go, again, plugins, install plugins, add new. There's also a plugin editor, which I don't recommend that you use. This is basically like a code editor for the installed plugins. It's not something that's recommended to be used. You shouldn't be updating plugins that way or making changes to them. But it's handy if you're creating your own plugins, if you want to make a quick change without like going through your whole workflow. You can go to the plugin editor and make a quick change in the code as well for a particular plugin. So that's about it. That covers the plugins, the plugin feature, and it's pretty straightforward. And again, just like themes, a lot of the settings and things that you see on your website and the settings on the left-hand menu here will be driven by the plugins that you have installed. So they're a really powerful way to extend the functionality of your website. Let's just recap really quickly, just to make sure we didn't miss any key takeaways. So again, plugins are the best and the worst feature of WordPress. They extend the functionality, but they can quickly get out of hand and really slow down your implementation. So keep the installation of plugins to a minimum if you can. Usually it's better to roll out and add new features using code, for example. If you know how to code, it's usually a better way there's usually a better way to add certain like minor features instead of installing a plugin for everything. But again, they're really powerful, you know, like e-commerce through WooCommerce is, for example, one of the most powerful plugins that extends your whole website into an e-commerce platform. So be very picky about the plugins that you install. Do your due diligence, like I showed you earlier. For example, you know, installing plugins through just adding it as a zip file, that's also an option. Let me just go back quick and I'm not sure that I demonstrated that. You can also, just like you can install zip files for themes, you can also upload plugins using a zip file as well, instead of searching for them here and installing them. This is common if you're buying premium plugins, for example, that need to be installed that aren't in the directory. So those plugin developers, for example, don't have them in the WordPress directory because they want people to pay and purchase them and then install them that way, for example, as well. So, but still do your due diligence and do your research before installing plugins on your website, because they can expose you to a lot of risk and slow down your website. So people usually ask me this: what are my recommended plugins? For me, must-haves are performance plugin, security plugin, Elementor. That's the one of the most common things that we use for building websites. It's a visual builder that I'll show. That's really powerful, and an SEO plugin. And I recommend RankMath is my favorite SEO plugin. Those are kind of must-haves for me. There are also some smaller ones as well, like I showed, like duplicate page, for example, and some other ones like that that I'll add through this course to demonstrate how they work and what they're used for. And that's it for topic number 7.